here we go. Ready? All right. All right. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Patch Notes, the Homegames podcast. This is episode 20, which is exciting because it's in 4K, or so I've been told.
This should be recorded. We're recording this in video format, and it is a 4K video.
There we go.
It is the 20th episode of Patch Notes, and today is Monday, March 9th, our tightest deadline yet.
Tightest. I'm Yazeed.
I'm Joseph.
There we go. This is the first time you've ever seen us, hopefully.
Yes.
How's it going, man? Real quick.
It's good. So I guess for episode 20, we're doing this kind of different thing. Obviously, we have a video going, which is very different from our previous stuff. We kind of wanted to shift focus, or I guess kind of figure out what we're doing with this whole thing. Up to this point, we've kind of just been turning on a mic and talking, which is really what we're doing this time, but we're trying to go with more of a focus thing. So see how this is going. We're supposed to, we're trying to go home game stuff and then general conversation and then kind of other stuff. And that's what's up.
Yeah.
It's updates about the podcast.
Yeah, state of the podcast, if you will.
State of the podcast.
And you should throw in once every 5 episodes. It's like a section. Anyway, home games. What is it? What it's all about? It's actually a really heavy week for home games for both of us. People who don't know what home games is, it's the product that Joseph and I both work on. And by product, I mean Love Child, but that's beside the point. Basically, to give my rundown of it, it is a way to play games with your friends in a LAN setting with your phone or a controller or a computer. Basically, if you're hanging out in your living room and you're like, bruh, let's play some games together. Home games is the way to do that. Or, and if you're adventurous, you can make games, which I was.
You made a game.
I have made a game. Made significant progress and improvements as well. Which I'll be talking about.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. I guess that's kind of what this podcast is. Talking about us and kind of just stuff, but really it's a focus on our progress on what we're doing. We build home games. We've been working on this for a long time. And this is kind of just us talking about what we're doing and updating people on it. Yazeed has built a game that he is almost finished with.
I am further along than I was when I made it on the old master branch. So I would say if before I was at 90%, I'm at 95 now. Or if before I said I was at 95, then I'm 98.
Okay.
Yeah. Pretty significant.
Nice
Improvements. Yeah.
So you're officially a game developer, basically.
I'm officially an unpaid intern, which I think is what most game developers are anyway.
That's true. No one actually makes any money making games. But yeah, I guess we do this in our free time. It's just kind of a side hobby thing for us. But we think it's fun, and we record this thing, and we talk about this thing.
That's right.
Yeah. See you next week.
I'm going to start, if that's okay. So the game that I've been working on is called Square. It's very similar to Frogger, but instead of frogs, it's rectangles. And Square because I like making things hard to say, just like my name.
Wouldn't rectangular have been much?
Rectangular is harder to say, but it's too long. And I don't want to type that much.
I get it.
So for people who don't know, a couple weeks ago, what I said I would do is I would make Square, and then I made Square, or I made a V1 of Square. And then Joseph put out a new, a pull request or a branch or updates to the master branch that everything is pointing to. And so over the last week and a half, I would say, I took what I did make in the old version and kind of bring it over to the new one and cleaned it up a bit. So where Square is at right now is you can join a lobby, you can move your square, you can disconnect, and that means that there's free space, which was something we ran into last time. There are NPC squares that move around at a certain tick rate. There's now actually going 2 different directions. The top half, meaning the half closer to the destination square, moves reverse. And the bottom half, meaning the closer side to the way the players spawn from, moves left to right. So, and with them is now a new middle space to give you some purchase in the game because before I think like level 6 became impossible basically.
I did beat it that one time.
You did, but I think you were cheating, weren't you?
I don't know.
I think you were using a controller before. Like I had the controller stuff really pat down.
Yeah, that was it. You were reading my inputs from the controller way faster than a keyboard, so I was able to just hold it forward and
just
basically
zoop
shoot
across
the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So some of the updates that I still want to make to it are, I want to add more like NPC types. So like if people have played Frogger before, Frogger can hop on crocodiles, and that depends on like what color they are and stuff like that. So I'll probably add in some of that. The other thing I want to add in is I don't like that you can get to the end point of the level. There's like the line that no enemies will spawn on, and in that line there's like a little destination square. And if you can get to that line that the destination square is on, you're basically home free. So as long as you can make like a vertical line across, you're good to go. I don't really like that. I want there to be a challenge of like trying to navigate through the maze and like get to the center somehow if you're not starting in the very center. And even if you are in the very center, I feel like that's the hardest point to start on. So I don't know. Those are things that like I still want to clean up a little bit.
So if you have stuff moving like in opposite directions, if you have stuff on the bottom half going this way, the stuff on the top half going this way, shouldn't that make it impossible to just shoot through? Or because they start on the opposite sides, right? Or
well, effectively they do. So all of them start at the 0 line. So they start like the edge, and then when the half that goes to the left to go across, they like instantly will jump to the other side, basically.
Okay.
So effectively they do start over there. It just made it easier to like have them all start in like a set interval. But other than that, other really nice improvements is I created like that event stack basically. So I no longer have to worry about like weird edge cases where like player moved at the same time that an NPC ticked, and now they all go into like an event queue, and that event queue just gets consumed every 60 seconds or whatever 1000 divided by 60 is.
16 point something.
Yeah. So that's the rate at which it gets consumed at. So it gets consumed pretty regularly. Other than that, I also capped the game finally. So it's no longer infinite, but it's always the same at level 9. So now if you get past level 9, no more things spawn. So I want to put in like a little like leaderboard to say who scored the most and stuff like that.
So you can beat it. Basically.
Yeah, you can actually finish the game now.
Nice.
So there's like a lot of like little adjustments and things like that, and also just like learning more about how Homegames works. I do have some questions for you though.
Sure.
First of all, handle player disconnect.
Let's talk about it.
Handle player disconnect is a function that gets called by Homegames, like core Homegames.
Correct. To
let you know that hey, a player disconnected, handle this however you want, and you just make a function called handle player disconnect. And that takes in an argument called, and in slaps it's called player.
Yeah, it should be player ID.
But it is the player ID.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not player.id.
Yeah. So the way that one should work is, I think we mentioned on a previous episode, but it should be like a React type thing. This thing will happen, and this thing did happen.
I don't think you should be slapping, because I think that's going to pick it up.
This thing will happen, and this thing did happen.
Yeah. I don't know if it was or not. I'm just saying it probably will.
This whole setup is a nightmare. We'll talk about that later. But so anyway, the thing, like, basically when the handle player disconnect is called, the player has already been removed. So it can't give you the player; it's already deleted it.
Oh, I see.
It gives you a player ID saying, "Hey, in case you had anything locally in memory referencing this player ID, delete it." But we should have. I guess I don't know what the player object has that would be valuable before that, but I need to update it so it basically would call player will disconnect, remove, player did disconnect.
Okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense, because I would have thought that it would call like the game's disconnect before it actually like kills that player.
Yeah, and it doesn't right now. It does it after. So we should update for both, because you would have to be able to, you would think about like player will connect, player will connect, player did connect also, instead of like, hey, you have a new player and it's already in your game.
Yeah.
Instead of like, hey, you're about to get a new player. So you kind of need to have these two separate
like
things.
set up some stuff for it.
Yeah.
Because I think also if we do that first, then you could also cap games at a certain level. or not a level, sorry, like a certain number of players. Because like for my game, for example, there's only so many spots that a player can spawn in before it becomes impossible to create a new spot or a new spawn point. So I think we would need to like have a way of saying like this player would like to connect. Do we allow it? Do you like say good to go?
Should that be a game logic thing, or do you think that we should have something like a max player count defined in a metadata?
I think we would need to let the user know that they were rejected from that session with a message that says like this game is above its player cap.
Should the game handle that itself? Like, should Square have any logic to say, hey, we have 4 players, we can only handle 4?
I think Square should say, because like some games maybe like imagine like Quake like when Quake got over the number of allowable players, you just became a spectator. I think like certain games that's fine, but other games it's like, what are you gonna expect? Like what would you do?
I suppose that could be another metadata thing though, where like the Homegames kind of framework is saying, well, this game has too many players, and they've defined a Boolean that says can spectator whatever, and then it would say like Homegames is handling all that stuff for you. You know what I mean?
I don't think Homegames should handle it. I think because different games want to handle that differently. Think about like, okay, so Square, it's top down. You're looking at the board and you're seeing the NPCs move and you're seeing the players move. Quake, you don't want to see a top down view. That might be, you could be cheating.
Sure.
So instead you'd have like each individual player's view. How would Homegames know what to do? You'd have to define it in the game ultimately, I think.
I suppose it could call some sort of function within the game to like handle spectator or something, but
I think that the game itself would say like, oh, this we're like over cap, so like make him a spectator, basically.
Sure.
But I think that we ultimately need to have a way of telling like the server of like, yo, this game is full. Don't add more people.
So kind of a combination of metadata just for the server to know something, but then also not actually doing anything about it.
Well, there's a chance that a game doesn't want spectators. It's like a single player game that you just spectate.
So if I say this is a single player game, player cap is 1, Homegame server sees there's 1 player in this game, someone goes to the dashboard and they're seeing it there. The Homegame's dashboard is like, hey, there's 1 player max. I don't know what happens if you click into this.
Yeah, I think so. So like then it lets the game know like this player would like to join, like will join basically, like Reacts will mount. And the game can say like stop them, like returns back something to the server that says like don't allow them to join, like tell them to create a new session or something.
Or they could just like kick a player at random and put something else. I guess if they wanted to do that, they could.
Boy, that would be even better. I think I like the randomness of like this person was winning and then they got blue shelled. Yeah. Am I getting removed from the game?
Sure. So okay. So we define it in metadata, and maybe we don't need to have crazy Homegames wide logic for it.
I don't think we need to. I think each game can handle it separately, and then what we could do is like if we started to see patterns, we could do kind of like what React did when they said like these are some patterns that we recommend. So like if you want spectators, this is kind of how we recommend it. If you want no spectators, this is kind of like how I recommend and like what you should do with it, because that makes Homegames flexible, like in terms of what the game itself can handle. And I think it really should be at a game by game basis.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The second point I had on here was I think the server has the wrong number of players.
What?
I don't think we count the person who creates the session as a player. When you like create a session and you try to join it, it'll say like 0 players in the session. I think it needs to say 1 because if somebody's in there.
Yeah, that's a bug. I forget where the logic is, but yeah, that's a bug. I've noticed that too.
Okay, I'll take a look at that too, because if I can get it into my PR, I'll do it. Because the other thing too is I have another point on here afterwards. And then this is just kind of like a silly thing, but I still haven't figured out how to make players visible to each other. So there's just occasionally a block that you can't enter for some unknown reason.
It should be as simple as set player ID to 0. And that's it.
Set player ID to 0?
Yeah, so the game node constructor has an optional player ID. Oh, sorry. The game node constructor has an optional player ID. It's going to be hard. I touch things a lot.
Should like a whale-shaped pillow?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. What am I saying?
The constructor for game node?
Yes, player ID. So if you give it a player ID, it will just say this is only visible to this person. If you say it's 0, then it's visible to all.
Yeah.
It's not super clear, I guess. The
Oh, that player ID is not the player's ID?
No, it's the ID of it's like this garbage of if it's a non-zero player ID, we expect that it's only for one player.
Can we clean that up? Because I thought that was the player's ID, and so I use it as the player's ID.
You say the player's ID. Oh yeah. So like,
because I need to find that player's ID to know whether like who's supposed to move, which node is supposed to move.
You could map that somewhere else in memory, I suppose.
Well, I would need an ID to do that.
You get the node ID from the thing, and then because when you construct the node, it gets an ID. I mean, yeah. I mean,
maybe I should have you take a look at that. I'll put out a whip PR. Yeah.
Okay. Because I mean, like we had that conversation a while back about how we actually need to make that a list, not a single player ID, and that's work that we can do. It's not super hard. The other thing, like, I guess there's not much value besides, like, you can have something in memory to have the player ID map into a node, but maybe in a general sense, should we have like some sort of metadata within the game node for someone to just shove in anything else they want within the game?
I mean, I did that too. Because you can it's just an object.
Right.
You know, I just put in new variable like values and stuff like that. Like I have a default X basically that tells you like what your spawn point is. Mm-hmm. So like I just keep track of where you're supposed to spawn, and then after each level, that's when I reset it for everyone, so that if somebody is left since the game started or something, it'll like re-put people back where they're supposed to be.
Got it.
So
I've also
nice
been doing that, just kind of like object.thing and then just knowing .thing is there. But do you think we should have kind of a more canonical method of doing that?
I think that it's more similar to like, the thing is like I don't want to always bring it back to like what React does, but React does do this nicely with their props. Mm-hmm. And you can send in like anything to the prop, and whether that object, like whether that component uses that prop or not is up to that component, or just it's just a pass through or whatever. I think that if we cleaned up how we I'm gonna do something weird for a minute. I think that if we figured out a better way of like not a better way, if we just had like a set procedure, basically like an example of like this is how we think you should do it. Like how React does, or like how Material UI does it, or Angular, where they're like, we think you want to use it like this. If you don't use it like this, then you may or may not run into some weirdness.
Then I would say we should have metadata that is not squished, because that metadata has no value to the client if it's only for the server to maintain something.
Oh, like a non-sent data.
Yeah, because I mean, if I say that this player ID is something, well, the squisher doesn't care because the client doesn't do anything with that. If it's just some sort of thing for you to shove in, like the way that we do, if we say object.property equals this, the squisher doesn't know about it unless property is already defined in the squish spec. So if you say, hey, we know you're going to do this, instead of just setting it directly on the object, set it on object.metadata. At least that way it's all in one thing instead of just like a loose collection of keys.
I agree. Okay, that works. Like I could definitely see that as being useful.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just to help, because it would avoid the thing of like, oh, I'll map this ID that I got out and put it in a in-memory map somewhere in my code. Like, have it kind of more there.
Yeah, and I think we run into less problems of like something accidentally overwriting an important field. Yeah. Like, no one knows that POS is like, you would probably should know that, but if you didn't and you changed it and now suddenly you're getting an error and you're like, oh, I don't know. You're like deep into Squish trying to figure it out. Like, we shouldn't be doing something like that.
Also, it's definitely pause, like for position, but calling it POS is also pretty good.
I don't know what it is. I don't like saying the
shortening of a word.
Like I prefer to just say like the acronym.
Like DIR. What DIR?
DIR. I say DIR, but I say CLS or clear.
Clear?
Clear.
Like, as opposed to what?
No, like, I'm just saying, like, I say CLS or clear, like, depending. Like, I use them interchangeably.
What is CLS?
Oh, CLS is DOS's clear scroll back.
Buddy, that's...
Well, actually, I think that's more useful than having to say double clear. To, like, clear all the scroll back?
CLS, but no one knows DOS commands. It's 2020.
All right, fair enough. I mean, most people shouldn't need to know DOS commands. I like DOS.
Oh, because like ls. I meant dir isn't direction. But that's
Oh,
that's the problem of shortening words. It could be directory or direction.
Oh, that makes more sense. I was like, why are we going into like CLI commands? Like, what's going on? I don't call it a CLI.
CLI. Yeah, that's true. Well, that's because it'd be like
command line interface.
Anyway, it's a tangent for sure.
It really is. And then the last piece that I had on here is I looked over your PR, which I'm sure you'll talk about.
Sure.
Your whip PR, and then I needed to go back through and clean up my colors PR as well.
Yeah, I had a couple of comments on that one, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's really like all for me. I mean, I made a ton of progress. I mean, that stack queue, I think that we might want to like implement something like that just in general, like a
global event queue thing,
or like not like a global one, but maybe like a library to like help people manage a state queue basically, so they don't have to do it in each game. Because I mean, I think it can get tedious to manage a state queue. If we had a way of just like saying like push into this queue, and we like formalize the arguments into that queue. Because right now what I take in is whether or not it's an NPC, because that's important to me, which array I need to manipulate, like I need to find to move. And then the other piece that I need to know is which node in particular I'm moving. Why do I need to know whether an NPC or not? Interesting. I'll get around to that.
Programming.
Yeah. Maybe I need to get another look at my queue. And then the last piece I need to know is what direction that they're supposed to be moving. Because for me, everyone's going to move in chunks of 5, for example. Or if I made everything smaller, chunks of 3. Which I thought about doing, but then 3 doesn't divide into 100 evenly, and I don't like that.
Yeah. That's definitely a problem. No, but yeah, I think that totally makes sense. If input can change state at any point, and a state change triggers a render, that kind of creates this potentially gross thing of like 10,000 updates happened in this second, and I had 10,000 state changes that caused 10,000. But no, my next tick, I'll look at these things and figure something
out. Yeah, I agree. Also, it comes with less concurrency issues, because one of the things I ran into in my old branch before I had the state queue was like you as the player actually had like a really tiny interval where if you moved at the same time that the NPC was going to move on top of you, you could actually avoid the NPC, which is like funny skill expression of like you're mechanically good enough to like always hit that, but at the same time I feel like that's not true to Frogger.
Yes. I was going to go off on a thing, but I don't actually understand the problem yet. So I guess I have to repro that to see exactly how that happens.
That happened. It doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
Because the state queue does that one at a time. Well, basically what happened is like the interval of ticking was at a set rate. So like each block would move at its own rate. And so if you, the player, just had good coordination and you moved at the same time that the block was going to come into your square, you could just basically like I was checking collisions at the end, and then I had this like weird thing where I had to check collisions like before it moved and after it moved, and like a bunch of random garbage. I think that checking collisions that often isn't good. I think we should only have to check collisions at like after everything moves, after any one piece moves.
Yeah, instead of having to go and do it for every single thing that you do.
Yeah, it's not like in chess you go like, did I hit something? No? All right, let's move on to the next one. Like, what? Yeah. So it's like just one of those like little things that I think that the state queue cleans up.
Sure.
But yeah, that's pretty much all for me.
Yeah, nice. Okay, I got some stuff for Homegames. Also, we're not even at 30 minutes in yet, and we're in Homegame stuff. It's a different feeling.
It really is. It is totally different.
This is not my notes. Okay. So, kind of quick update on what I've been working on, or I guess a recap, is I'm working on what I've been calling Game Thing. It's really just this initial proof of concept of more of like the most active and involved game that I've made so far. And the idea was, I say was because I have some updates. The idea was that I joined this room. This room is kind of the start of this randomly generated layout of rooms. someone goes through these rooms, and other players can kind of put things in the rooms for this main player to interact with, mostly just killing stuff. And kind of going from there and seeing what's fun, like weapons, weapon upgrades, collecting currency, how does currency, like kind of just figuring out all this kind of stuff from there, making a traditional dungeon crawling type game, but putting it in the framework of Homegames and saying that other players in the same network can do something with your game while you're playing it. And I realized a couple things about that really sucked. Like, first was that it wasn't fun, like, at all. Like, the idea of I'm just going around kicking stuff and killing it, and you over there can click the screen and there's a guy and go and kill it, like, that sucks. And kind of going down this rabbit hole of like, well, how do I make it fun? Yes, but also just doing some testing, realizing that on my laptop, which is acting as my server, performance is fine. It's talking to itself over a network. It's very fast. But if I have another device, like an iOS device or anything, it's way worse. Like, watching the guy walk, you can see him chunk.
Oh, no.
That's not good. That's not nearly, like, that's something that's, like, foundationally busted. And if I make all this other crazy stuff on top of it, it's still broken. So I realized I have to go and, like, fix performance or accept that we can't do certain things and rethink what I'm trying to do. So, yeah, that was just bad. So I did some investigation and realized a few things. So one of them is that the WebSocket stuff being on, because as you probably know, JavaScript is single-threaded, and on the client, unless you do workers, you just have one execution thread. It's a main thread. That thread handles everything. So if it gets a socket message, it's blocking on that socket message, and things like rendering a canvas are blocked at that time. And just kind of creates this weird back and forth and kind of choke points in the logic of this thing isn't happening because this thing over here is blocking, and so running both of those things on one caused performance degradation. That you can actually see the timing of each frame is slower as a result. So one thing I did to kind of test fixing performance was using web workers, if you're familiar with JS web workers. So essentially you just tell the browser, hey, spawn this other, it's essentially a separate thread that just does stuff. It doesn't have access to the DOM, so I can't manipulate the DOM directly, but I can do things and give them back to the main thread to put something in the DOM or whatever. So I moved all the WebSocket stuff to its own file. Handles all of the communication and all the kind of whatever, which I'm pretty sure is a good thing anyway, like all the socket client code. And that's in a web worker, which just passes data, basically the current up-to-date data, back to the main thread. And that main thread is just consuming that data and then rendering. So that helped performance quite a bit. Not significantly, but it made it faster, 10%, 20%, something like that. Excuse me. So that was the first thing I did. Then I kind of went down the rabbit hole even more and realized that you can do an off-screen canvas. So basically you say, hey, I have this canvas. I don't want to manipulate it on the main thread. I am very explicitly handing it off to the worker thread. You say transfer to off-screen canvas. The worker thread is now responsible for manipulating things and putting it in the canvas. It still doesn't have access to the DOM. You just put stuff in it. And I got that working. It was really cool. So all the socket and canvas manipulation stuff were in one, and all the player input stuff was in the main thread.
Hey.
Was super happy with that. Tested it in Firefox on my laptop. Tested it in Chrome. Worked. Super pumped. Went on iOS. Did not work. I was like, oh, like nothing even rendered.
Jesus.
And then I realized all that stuff is not supported in iOS at all. So I just scrapped it. That was like 4 hours of my time. I probably should have Googled that before. But whatever. I mean, that's, like I said, scrapped. I actually referenced it in that PR that I put up of what branch it's on, in case you're ever curious. But basically, it's all just WebSocket stuff in the worker now. Rendering
is iOS never going to support it?
I don't know. It seems to have been around for a not short amount of time, and iOS still doesn't support it. So it's not super important. It didn't give me great performance. You know, it was still kind of not great. So that kind of led me down this other rabbit hole of I just need to test bottlenecks. I think it's actually a ticket that I have in the GitHub issues or issue I have, where we need to figure out what the slow part is. I don't know if it's rendering on the canvas. I don't know if it's traversing the tree on the server. I don't know if it's the socket message going across the network. I don't know what it is. Why is the phone so much slower than this? So I created a separate app.js basically, which is just testing performance, and it has the same worker as the main app.js, so I can test the socket kind of independently. And all it does is just onto the DOM, it puts out, because debugging in the console is hard on mobile devices. So in HTML, it just says the timing of the last message, how the distance, the time change, whatever, between the previous two frames. And so on the server, I say set interval 10 milliseconds, send an update. Where ideally, in a perfect world, on the client, that number is always 10 since the last message. But then on the actual laptop, like I said, since it's talking to itself, it's pretty much that. It would go 10, 11, 10, 11, because there's occasional times when it would, whatever. But on Chrome, on iOS, and on Safari and iOS, it would be like, 10, 10, 230, 10, 10, 10, 97. It's just like, okay, something's busted here. And realizing that there's like low level craziness, because the TCP stuff, like WebSocket's still over TCP. It's still network stuff that's abstracted from everything I'm writing that I don't understand, but there's overhead there. And at the end of the day, there is time taken for the message to go from this laptop over the network, the LAN, and back to my device. And anything more than like 5 millisecond delay from when that message is sent to when that message is received is not acceptable. And realize that's impossible with WebSockets. And so I kind of was rethinking, like, do I need to make a super active game? Do I need to make a thing where frame perfect timing on kicking and making sure that they didn't dodge and all that kind of stuff? Like, do I need to make that? And if it's not fun, why am I making this? So kind of rethinking all that kind of stuff. I'm getting winded because I'm talking so much. I have a lot to say, and the video is freaking me out. But so, anyway, that kind of just went down this thing, and then I learned about this algorithm called Nagel's algorithm, Nagles.
Okay.
So I guess on the server side, there's this optimization where it's like, okay, well, I'm sending out all these messages, and I don't know about the client. I don't know if it's getting them. I don't know if it's overwhelmed by them. I'm just pushing them out. So I'll keep them queued up until either some time has passed or they specifically respond to me. Something like that.
Okay.
Basically, it's a SYN and ACK, TCP ACK thing. Over WebSocket, which is already over
TCP.
And
so it's just putting TCP on top, all right?
But I don't know. You see, like, this is just me looking at Stack Overflow and taking something that I think I understand and applying it to this, but I don't know if that's the case. Anyway, I went down this other thing and tried experimenting with, okay, well, what if every time the message is sent to the client sends basically an ACK packet, an ACK message back to the server to kind of keep this connection very alive, because it's constantly going back and forth. That didn't help at all. And so, like, okay, well, what if I just do... Anyway, went down this whole thing, realized that Nagel's algorithm is already disabled in WS library, so that was all for nothing, because it was already turned off and I was just wasting... Anyway.
Is it turned off by default or like explicit, like, do not use this?
It's turned off by default. You can't even...
Oh, fantastic. So it is, don't use this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I actually went into the node modules directory, modified the library directly, and made it turn on, and it was worse. So I was like, okay, then something, this is doing something.
Yeah.
So another method I read about was if you keep basically like a very active heartbeat, like don't give it time to rest. Like every 10 milliseconds, just send something. Like do something. Keep the activity going so there's never any time to slow down. That didn't work. And it was like this whole thing, and it was very frustrating because I just realized this is all busted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my kind of little investigation there, and then kind of had this realization that maybe this thing should just be basically like build your own board game. If you think about a board game, there is no active, like, I'm not fist fighting you over the board game. I'm just putting, it's turn-based type thing. So if it's slower like that, then 100 milliseconds between frames is not a problem.
Yeah.
Because that's about what the average was on Chrome. Like,
Well, I think the other thing too is like if you are trying to make a game that's picture perfect, right? It's like straight like a fighting game, which that has to be frame perfect, basically. They play locally.
what do you mean?
The fighting game communities, they don't really judge you on your online play. Like it's your local play. It's like they'd plug in like 2 controllers into the laptop to do like picture perfect stuff.
That is true. So that would be more of like yeah, you're right. You plug in 2 controllers into one thing and kind of just go from there. I guess that feels like not what I want to make.
Yeah.
Like the idea, like I still, I want to do the thing where you can plug in controllers and have it all be as good as possible, as fast as possible, maybe without even a network. But giving someone the option of the network and saying, hey, you can string this to other things and it always just kind of works if it's fast. If it's like, oh yeah, but actually don't make anything that requires real interactions over the network because it's not fast enough.
Yeah.
You get 10 frames a second. It's like, that's not great.
No, that's 10 frames a second's pretty bad.
But that's on Chrome on iOS. On my mom's laptop on the same Wi-Fi over her Family Dollar router.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any kind of a difference. I don't know anything about.
It's probably what most people are going to be using
Exactly.
anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I can't be testing on high-end stuff because people don't just have high-end stuff. I don't have high-end.
You want to run like a 1 gig? No, I'm kidding. You want to make them run fiber optics just to...
Yeah, exactly. Have a direct wired connection of all your devices, and it's just that easy.
Yeah, to your phone. Figure that out.
Yeah. Have another dongle for your iPhone. But in my kind of rabbit hole, I went and looked into... I found something called WebRTC. You've ever heard of that? Mm-mm. I just found it like 2 hours before I drove here, so I don't really know a whole lot about it. I got this very basic thing of code working that does it, but I don't even know what it's doing.
Okay.
So my understanding, very basic understanding, is that this structure, as opposed to every client talks to a server, it is a server facilitates communication for peer-to-peer networking. So I'm a client. I talk to WebSocket. WebSocket's doing something.
Right.
I talk to client. Client talks to client. Server is doing something, but like we're talking to each other directly, and over a LAN that's very fast. Like if the things know each other, you know how to talk to each other, then it's just like, hey, I got data, you got data, we got data. There's no centralized like what's the data from the server, and there's less overhead in the packets because there's a direct communication.
Right.
I don't know anything, but like that's the idea. So I have this very basic thing of what is this? I have no idea. I'm going to probably spend the next week figuring out if that is anything where I can make it fast enough and do something super crazy. And if not, I'll probably scrap game thing and make something else. Like something hopefully fun, but not so active, not so engaging, not so like, I don't think Twitch gameplay is like the thing that we're going to do. You know what I mean?
Hey man, I'm gonna make a typing game.
Yeah.
You can't do one letter every 10 letters a second.
No. You can pick input up just fine. I'm saying that the frame sent out to the other devices, on average, is about where it should be. But you occasionally get these spikes.
I see.
So
it's just like intermittent lag.
Yeah, and it's like drop frames and super crazy like sync issues where I move on the laptop and guy is going left, right. On my phone, it's left, right, right. Like it goes way fast because it's catching up with all the frames that it already had to do. And so that's just not good enough. And so the performance testing thing I have is just, like I said, it'll show you the thing at the top, but every time the number goes above some threshold, it'll just basically put it into the DOM and say what the number was. So set interval 10 milliseconds. Cool. Most of the time it's fine. It's just saying 10, 11, 10, 11. Then I have a thing, and if it's above 20, put it in the DOM. 20, 50, 90. Never went above 100, like in that little scenario. but it does go close to 100. So it can't be like a very smooth, consistent 60 FPS to all devices on the local network because it's just not there. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to look into this stuff, have a better explanation because I have no clue how it works, and come back to that next week with hopefully good news. But if not, R.I.P.
Well, I
Game
mean,
Thing.
well, the thing is, like, you could still make Game Thing.
Oh, yeah.
You just have to slow it down.
Yeah, that's true. But then what does it look like? If there's no...
And that's for you to figure out.
Yeah, it's kind of like rethinking what the thing is. And I guess I don't really know what I'm doing with that. I'm not super passionate about Game Thing. I mean, it's just a way to test if I could do this. And I'm learning that I cannot, which is kind of the point. So
yeah,
going from there. But I guess I don't know what I'm doing next. But beyond the WebRTC stuff. It kind of depends on the WebRTC stuff. But it is fun to read about WebRTC stuff because I don't know what it is. And it's something that apparently has existed for years. I've never heard of it. So
yeah, I've never heard of this either.
Yeah,
is it better to use TCP as opposed to UDP and then building our own version of TCP?
Well, so there's no... I was looking into this because we use TCP now. It's all the WebSockets are over HTTP, TCP, whatever stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was looking at if I can basically just talk on a UDP port from a browser, and you can't. You can't say, like, just give me messages and I'll do something with them. Like, that's what I was hoping for.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's not supposed to do that. The TCP methods are, the UDP are not. So I was actually looking at that this morning, and you can't do that. So that's why I looked into WebRTC, because I was Googling stuff, and somebody on Stack Overflow said WebRTC supports UDP or TCP. Don't know how that works quite yet. If those APIs aren't exposed, I don't know how that actually works. So again, I have no clue. It seems very complicated. There's a whole Udemy or one of those like online school things. There's an entire course on it. So hopefully Googling stuff will get me somewhere.
That's crazy. If it's been around that long and neither of us have heard of it, is it?
Apparently the use case is like a lot of the demos I've seen are like video chat. It's about
I see.
Streaming data, and it's like peer-to-peer connections. I'm guessing it's like this idea of I'm streaming a video to like 1 million people. It'd be faster, I don't know, if I give it to you and then you're giving it to others around you instead of everybody having to come to me.
I mean, I guess that makes sense for video, but like for us, like the server needs to do, unless we like, right? I don't know.
Well, if input, so yeah, it would essentially mean that one client is like the master client.
It's like the host of a lobby, basically, in COD or whatever.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it is literally the host. Like, it would be the same client running on the same machine as the host is like the main client. Other clients would have to send their input to the main client, which then sends it off to the server. The server is still here, but not everybody's talking to the server. One thing.
Oh, so it talks to the server responds to that, and then it just distributes out its horrible spiders.
I think so. I have no idea. I'm totally wrong on probably all of this stuff. So
I don't know. I mean, it could be faster. The other thing too we might want to look into is threading the throwing out of objects, because I think one of the things that we're going to run into is a bottleneck when you get to like 10, 20, 30 people.
When the broadcast call might be, we would need to have a separate thread for every server process for it to put it into something.
I mean, you don't need to have a separate thread for each, but you would just create a pool of like workers, and you just hand it off to that pool, and you say like, you guys send this off, and then like 5 or 6 of them can churn through it,
but
logarithmically better than
the WebSocket would need to have, or the thread would need to have direct access to the socket in order to call broadcast or send on it. Mm-hmm. So then,
so you just have, I see what you mean.
Yeah. It couldn't share them all between them.
Yeah. Okay.
Or maybe it could. I don't know how that would work, but that seems. I guess that'd be part of like investigating bottlenecks. We can test to see if there's 100 clients to see what happens.
Well, because you're sure that the bottleneck is around it being received on the client side, not on being sent by the server.
Correct. Yeah. The latency I was seeing was like it could take 5 to 40 to 100 milliseconds from, because I was doing another thing with like the thing is just sending it a timestamp of when it sent it.
Mm.
And the client is just giving the diff of when it received it from when it sent.
Oh, I see.
And both of them were bad. So it seems like the network is just kind of the very complicated thing that I need to figure out how to
get around.
Yeah.
This must be the net code that people talk about all the time. They're complaining
the net code, bro.
The net code, bro. Well, how come this game sucks? It's the net code. If they fix the net code, man, everyone will be playing this game. It's like, what are you talking about? What is net code? I don't know.
Shut up, bro.
They're like, I drop frames all the time. It's like, how good are you? The frame no, anyway.
Fighting game people are like nuts on that.
Fighting game people are, and FPS shooters should be.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of.
Like CSGO, I think you'd want that. Not like COD. I don't think people who are out here playing COD really need to care, but like a really tight shooter where it's like any misplay, like moving, like because people like in CSGO memorize the spray pattern even on different guns.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to attract that crowd because then they'll just criticize us for not being perfect, and I can't handle that. I don't want the CSGO crowd in games.
Honestly, I'm afraid of the CSGO crowd. They're a little bit too. We
referenced Tynan on one of our old episodes.
He's our CSGO guy.
He is the CSGO guy.
I watch professional. I can't play CSGO. I can't play shooters. I'm too stupid.
That was a lot of home game stuff. I have one more thing about home games.
Go for it.
It's been 48 minutes. Good God.
That's a lot of home games. Well, some of that's the mistake I made at the beginning.
Oh, right. The blooper reel.
The blooper reel.
My last thing is just I have a basic wiki with some basic documentation I wrote yesterday.
Right.
It's a getting started doc, and it has how to get the code, how to install dependencies, and how to make a game with a code snippet of a very basic hello world. So what you've been asking for like months at this point, we finally have a little intro of documentation. So that's cool. Hopefully, I also updated our Homegames website with a link to that documentation, and I changed my title from founder to creator because I didn't found anything. This is not a company.
You didn't find anything anyway. You made it with your bare hands. Yeah. That dude from BioShock would be proud.
There you go. What's his name?
Andrew.
Andrew Ryan, because it's like Ayn Rand or whatever.
What? Really?
Yeah, the whole...
That's hilarious. I didn't know that was a thing. I just know that the whole, like, is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow?
Yeah. That's the Ayn Rand. Yeah. Anyway, that's all my home game stuff. What an exciting time for home games. Yeah.
So, for our one regular listener... and anyone else who listens to this as well. I am curious if any of you have thoughts on if we should do deep dives into different parts of the project, like basically like start to break down these NPM packages into like chunks of episodes, basically. Say like this episode is about like the set of episodes around the squisher. These sets of episodes are around this. These sets of episodes are around this, like the utils and stuff like that. And just go from there.
And in a general sense, we just like feedback, I guess, on what people want to hear. If we go super technical, is that entertaining? If we go super light, like we've kind of been all over the place with our past 19, 20 episodes of this time we're talking about the event loop and node, and this time we're talking about, I don't know, it's blue type stuff. Like we have some, like what do people want to hear? But we'd definitely be down to do more in-depth, like an episode on a specific component or a specific technology we're using or something like that. I guess just let us know what you think about videos, about audio, about the podcast, about anything.
Yeah, literally about anything.
Feedback
would be pretty great, actually. One thing I wanted to ask you about, Joseph, is when should we start to formalize like the process, basically? Like when should we start to like notate down like this is how we think you should be using the base home game stuff? Do you think we have enough now, or do you think it's more like we more?
I know we said a couple weeks ago that we're in this like kind of stable phase and we're probably starting to think more about whatever, but then stuff like yesterday happened or today happened when I realized that the WebSocket sucks, and so I still need to make changes, and if that means that I have to make some sort of crazy fundamental change with how Homegames.link works and how the game server works, then we're not in a position to say this is how you should do it because we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
But once we get that stuff settled and we realize our limitations and we're able to specifically say, you cannot do this. Technically, you cannot do this. Then we can start to build that framework and stuff. And I think starting the documentation that I have there, on some level, me putting a code snippet is saying this is how you should do it.
Yeah.
Declare this .base in your constructor.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, like stuff like that. Like in some places we call it this .board, and in other places we call it this .table. And
But it's totally arbitrary. It's all just get root.
Right, but I think that we should start to specify this is probably how you want to do it. These are the words to use in this case, because then when we're writing documentation, we can say and now you add it to your base, and then you can keep going from there and stuff like that.
You could say add it to your root. I mean, we've already given it a name there by saying it's your root.
That's true. Which you have to have, by the way. I found that out. If you don't have a get root function that returns this .base for me, my thing didn't load.
Yeah, and I think that's another weird thing with JS is that you just run it. It doesn't work, but you run it. It'll go until it doesn't.
Yeah, it basically was just nothing. It just gave me a white screen, and I was like, okay.
Yeah. Well, what would you expect it to give you?
An error?
Oh, yeah.
You're missing a function?
It totally makes sense. Yeah.
I think that's a validated, part of the validator maybe. Maybe we should, you know what? Here's the thing, is that I have two choices now. I can start to clean up Square like I should do, like a good developer should do. Or I say, don't care. I'm going to put the PR out and Joseph's going to look at it. And while he's doing that, I'm going to do my own wild thing. And I could start writing a game validator, and I can say, these are the functions you have to have. And if you don't have them, you don't pass validation, your game's not a game. And then we can run it before we add the game to the...
Like a game test, like a generic
dashboard.
Game test.
Yeah, just make sure you have these functions defined. Make sure if we pass something in, it doesn't error.
Yeah.
Handling a new player doesn't error. Handling a disconnected player doesn't error.
I think we do need that, especially because if we start getting people contributing their games, then it'll be how do we know this works on a basic level? How do you unit test it? Kind of a Homegames wide thing.
Yeah, I think having a valid, and that goes back to what I was at 2 weeks ago when I really wanted to start a CI pipeline where I could say reject this pull request on the basis of it failed it failed some of the tests, at least one of the tests.
Yeah.
So if you're putting out a pull request of can you add this game to Homegames, we could say, you don't have a base to your game, you don't have a root, you don't have a game without a root, basically.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. That's my...
I mean, that's...
Although, I suppose if you did that and you never played your game, that's a disheartening sign, huh?
Yeah.
You tried to make a game and you're just going to put some garbage out and it didn't work at all.
Yeah. Well, I think that's that's very far in the future. I don't even know if...
I mean, I think we need a CI pipeline even for us to unit test some of the pieces to our games and stuff like that.
Sure. I think we're not there right now. I think we might give it a couple weeks, something like that.
Really? You think so? You think the utils are gonna change?
I have no clue.
Okay.
So I think
So you're saying you think I should clean up Square?
I mean, if you clean up Square, then it's okay, here we have all these tests and 3 games.
Yeah.
What do we do?
Yeah.
RTC? No. Audio with uploading files? No. What is our scope in the immediate? Let's say in the next year. What are we trying to get to? Instead of this could be faster, this could be better, and I keep going back and forth on that. But I think this here is probably going to be the definitive thing of what we're actually doing. And once we get that, we can start to go with our guidelines and actual automation to support those guidelines and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. Well, almost 1 hour in of talking about home games. That's a new thing for
Well,
us.
I mean, we had a lot more home game stuff than we normally. I mean, it just happened that we had a lot more time this week, both of us.
Yeah, we just came from dinner and we established that we were thinking maybe 80 minutes tops on each episode. I was thinking like an hour tops, but
well, the reason I said 80 minutes is because I think that some of it's going to have to get cut. The opening,
that'll
20
get
to 30 seconds, probably needs to be cut.
Yeah.
So if we did an hour, our podcast would be like 59 minutes and 30 seconds.
True. But I think this other thing about the video is that now all edits will be very obvious because you could see where we were and all that kind of stuff. So
don't mess up.
Don't mess up. One take.
One take.
Yeah.
One take.
Yeah. I mean, we can't restart it now. It's an hour in, you know?
No, I mean, it felt good.
Great.
It felt like a good chunk.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to go on to, I guess, what's up?
Yeah, we can go to what's up. I don't know. Not a lot is up for me. I had some lazy days these last few days. And on one of those lazy days, I decided that it was high time that I churn out Square. And so yesterday, I mostly just did Square stuff.
Nice.
Made Square better, improved.
Yeah.
And it felt good to do something.
Yeah.
As opposed to waking up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and not doing anything.
You need that sometimes. I need that sometimes.
I'm going to need that sometimes, but
Yeah.
it's not fun all the time. Or at least not for me anyway.
It's true. But going to bed at 4 a.m. is like it's like a feeling.
I love going to bed really early in the morning.
Yeah.
Like, we used to play Rainbow Six until like the sun was starting to come up.
Those were the days. We should play Rainbow Six again.
We should. That's
it's forever.
Not Siege. Siege is too smart for me.
I don't like Siege. I tried to play it like 2 weeks ago because I know all these changes have happened since we first played it when it came out. And there's like a community and kind of a big resurgence, and I just don't like that game. It's not as fun as Vegas 2. Vegas 2 is just good. Terrorist Hunt?
I think it's because we have fun with it and it's not as like weirdly overly competitive. Because I feel like in Vegas 2, if I made a mistake, it was like, it's just me and Joey. Like, it's fine. And when on Siege, it's like, oh, like XX, your mom, XXWQD 42 is going to now yell at me because I stepped 2 inches out of the window and didn't like lean over or whatever.
Right.
That feels bad.
It does. But winning Terrorist Hunt on realistic on Villa pistols only at 7 in the morning, that's the best feeling.
You're right about the pistols only making it the best feeling. What's funnier is that I've tried to convince other people to do pistols only with me.
No.
Like, I asked my brother to do pistols only with me. He does not enjoy it at all. He's like, why would I play this game handicapped for myself? And I was like, that's the challenge. Like, if you can do it, like, you're great.
Not everyone's cut out for it, you know?
No, you have to have a special kind of like one-track mind.
And be willing to play that game for 10 hours straight.
To win one round. Like, win one round.
God, I can't even imagine doing that now, though.
I can, absolutely.
Maybe. We'll probably do that sometime.
We'll probably do it eventually, yeah. Here's what we'll do. When we do a Home Games hackathon, we'll celebrate the week after the hackathon.
There you go.
We'll live stream ourselves playing Vegas 2 for 24 hours for charity or something.
Yeah, make a game, then play a game that you didn't make.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Hey, you can do the charity streams. That's good.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Helpful. We'll, get donations or not.
Or not, sure, whatever.
Well, one of my coworkers actually has had a podcast where he discusses beer, and it's been running for like 8 years. And every year he does the charity stream for video games for 24 hours.
That's cool.
And he calls out the next day.
Yeah.
Because I don't think playing video games for 24 hours then rolling into work is a safe, good idea.
Yeah. Speaking of not good ideas, I have a bullet point for what's up.
Okay.
Do you follow KFC news?
No, like we're still talking about like KFC, like Kentucky Fried Chicken. Okay, no.
Chicken. So on local radio, they've been playing a lot of these ads for this product that they sell, which is a donut sandwich or a chicken sandwich with donut buns.
Okay.
Kentucky Fried Chicken will put chicken strips between 2 donuts and sell it to you. So I tried that. maybe don't do that. It's the worst thing you can do to your body.
That sounds like it would hurt.
I felt like I've been dying all day. I had that for breakfast. Also a terrible idea. But chicken and donuts, just heavy on heavy, and there's nothing beneficial to you at the end of that besides maybe feeling full.
There's protein in the chicken.
Yeah, you're right. That's the bright side. There is protein in that chicken.
Fat too from the
oil.
oil.
Plenty of fat in there.
Yeah. Well, probably like the wrong kind, right? Like there's a good kind, there's a bad kind or something.
I think every kind of bad fat. I mean, it's 2 donuts.
Yeah.
Already not good for
Wait,
you.
it's 2 whole donuts?
Buddy.
It's not. I thought they cut a donut in half bagel style. You're telling me that this is like 2 chocolate sprinkled donuts and you're just supposed to go to town on it?
I mean, they're just regular glaze. It's just like a donut. But like,
oh, it's like an unsugared donut.
Full disclosure, we didn't get the donuts from KFC.
Okay.
We did a build your own donut sandwich.
Build your own donut sandwich.
We went down to the donut wheel. We got donuts.
Okay, all right.
So maybe it was not the thing.
That sounds like a special kind of punishment you put your stomach and intestines through.
And it's like, oh, I'm on vacation, like, oh, I gotta go for it. Oh, it's burritos and Whataburger and all this kind of stuff. Like just being a piece of garbage. But then taking it to the extreme of chicken donut sandwich, it's like a reminder that I could die one day.
Oh my god.
Speaking of being on vacation, came here from Seattle, which currently the world is on fire, and Seattle is a crazy place and scare about the whole...
Yeah, in comparison, it's moving a lot slower here.
Yes, as of right now. But I just wanted to mention, it was super strange just being in the airport. It was empty in SeaTac, and I had never seen that before, and it felt like it was something out of a horror movie. And I just think it's funny how they're like, oh, stay inside, limit social contact. And we're like, hell yeah, let's go record one in person.
I mean, you were at an airport.
Yeah.
I should be the one more concerned here. You should be the one more concerned, but like I should have been concerned about doing one in person with you. But instead I was like, let's do it.
I'm mostly fine. I think I'm fine.
It's like a 2-week incubation period, though.
On average, though, I think it's 3 days is what I've been reading.
Really?
So it's been like 4. So I'm fine.
All right.
I think.
I mean, I'm pretty good about not getting sick. I wash my whole body regularly.
Yeah, I've seen you do it. So Better Call Saul was on. They did the premiere. This is my what's up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm just going to move past what I just said.
You're good.
Better Call Saul sucks. I hate that show. It's so boring.
Reddit disagrees with you hardcore.
They're wrong about everything.
They said that Better Call Saul is the best television drama they've ever seen, and Vince Gilligan should get like an award or something like that.
They should watch more television dramas because Better Call Saul.
Maybe they shouldn't. Maybe they shouldn't, Jackson.
It's just so boring. Like I watched the first 3 episodes of season 5.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh, it's been a year and a half since the last season. What happened? Oh, right. Okay. What's happening now? Oh, nothing? It's dope. Like, this is the whole show. It's just waiting for something to happen. 4 episodes later, something happened. And it's not even interesting or whatever. And I really don't like that show. And I think I'm getting bummed out about the Breaking Bad universe because Breaking Bad is so good.
Yeah.
And El Camino sucks. And Better Call Saul sucks. They should stop. They should stop making that stuff. You should watch Better Call Saul. You might love it. You love boring shows.
No, my God. I don't love boring shows. If anything, I like really sad shows. I like shows where things are sad.
There's some sadness in there. It's like there's some depression vibes.
I've watched... See, like, the thing is, like... My brother watches a lot more TV than I do. And so, like, I've seen episodes of it. Mm-hmm. So, like, I saw the episode where Mike hides a camera in his brother... Like, what's his name? Like, Saul's house. Brother's house. Or whatever. To, like, show that he doesn't get dead from electricity. And I saw the, like, hospital episode and stuff like that. So I saw some stuff early on and I was like, oh, this could be, like, kind of cool and stuff. But I don't know. I watch TV, like, very slowly, I think. Because I have to watch The Good Place still. And I, like, killed myself watching an anime. And I didn't like it, so...
Maybe that's why you've had lazy days because you're just so burnt out on forcing yourself to watch
Dude,
anime.
watching like an hour and a half of anime a day every day for like a month was one of the worst experiences of my life, I think.
That doesn't sound good.
That feels like what depression probably feels like. Like honestly though, like afterwards you're just like so dead to the world a little bit.
What'd you think of the movie?
It was okay. Like I don't want to like slam the show or anything like that because I don't think it was.
Talking about My Hero Academia.
Yeah, I'm talking about My Hero Academia. I don't think I would rate it like 0 out of 10. I think it wasn't the right show for me. And I don't think I was the right audience for that movie. I went with people who really, really liked it, and I left there like very much like I'm not into this. So maybe I'm just not the target demographic. I don't know. It was okay. It had some parts to it. I won't even say I liked those parts. I thought that there was stuff going on. It had a lot of callbacks to Dragon Ball Z, which I thought was interesting, but I also laughed really hard at a scene where they did a zoom in.
Wait, is it the same universe as DBC?
No, it isn't.
So they just reference a whole separate thing?
Yeah, their hair gets a little spiky and it changes a little color a little bit.
Okay.
And like their eyes change from being like what I assume is regular anime eyes to being like
energy anime eyes?
Not even, the like Ubuntu's like what their home key is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
Where it's like that circle with the like things.
Yeah.
Yeah, their eyes became that basically.
Okay.
So it had a lot of callbacks to DBZ, which I thought was like okay, like the show probably does have a lot of like tie-in to DBZ. But there was a scene in there where legitimately they do a really tight zoom in on the main character's face, and he makes just such an awkward noise, and then they zoom into like his main rival but like friend, who's really just like super toxic bully person in his life. They zoom in on his face and he just growls, but it's not like he instantly growls and they zoom in. It's like they zoom in and there's like a pause and then he growls, and then it stays on his face after he's done growling. And I was like, you really can't make this stuff up, can you? Like, this is for real, like, what I'm here doing right now. When people came in cosplay and stuff, and I was like, whoa, I'm really not the right person for this movie.
You should watch The Good Place. You should go back to a quality show.
I should. Well, the thing is that I watched Weathering with You, and I really like that show. That show is actually, like, that movie really grew on me. Like, I've thought about it a lot since then, and I'm like, you know what? Pretty good movie.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Didn't have Dragon Ball Z people in it. Maybe I just don't like fighting in anime.
That's your only criteria? Is no anything close to Super Saiyan?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know, man.
Yeah. Well,
it's wild.
Speaking of watching stuff, I watched. You're familiar with Lil Peep, right?
You've mentioned Little Peep. Little Peep. Yes.
Little Peep.
Little Bo Peep. Yes, I know this man.
So yeah, he's the rapper who died. He actually died here.
What?
He died outside of the Rock.
He's dead?
Whoa.
I didn't even know he was dead.
So it's actually a really sad story, and there's a documentary on Netflix about it that they made, and
I feel bad for laughing now.
No, I mean it's whatever. He died here. He died here. I think like winter 2017. Mm-hmm. He had a show at the Rock. He OD'd on drugs and never made it. Anyway, horrible, tragic story. I really like this dude's music though, and I was generally like a fan or whatever before. But there's a Netflix documentary about it that's just like a 2-hour documentary that just kind of goes through the whole thing. Bummer of a story, but in that thing, at the end of it, they play one of his original popular songs called Beamer Boy. Mm-hmm. Fantastic song. Incredible song, and I hadn't heard it before, even though it's like one of his biggest ones.
Yeah.
And so, song of the week.
Oh, segue. That's some good segue right there.
My song of the week is Beamer Boy by Lil Peep. Bummer of a documentary, and that's the bright side of it though, is that I found that song, and yeah, you should watch that documentary if you're interested in that dude's music or him at all. My mom hadn't heard of him really at all. But she watched it and she was super into it too. So
that's interesting.
For whatever that's worth.
I'll give it a go, probably. I didn't think I would like the coffee documentary because I don't like coffee that much, but I could get into it. Yeah. I got into it a little bit.
I mean, if you're into sad stuff, it's certainly...
I'm very into sad things, actually.
It's a bummer, but that's a really good song. Kind of talking about music stuff. I have some runners up. Beamer Boy's obviously the winner. Lil Uzi Vert has a song called That Way, which interpolates or samples, I don't know the correct one, Backstreet Boys' I Want It That Way.
Ooh, that's a really interesting twist there.
Yeah. So he put that out as like a promotional single for his new album, was hyping up his album for like 3 years. His album came out, and I am super disappointed in it.
Really?
Crazy disappointed in it. I wrote down Lil Uzi Vert album is trash. I don't think I can say that like definitively quite yet because it just came out. Mm-hmm. But on my first, second, third, and fourth listens, I really don't like it. So
you listened to this whole album 4 times?
Yeah.
And you don't know if you don't like it.
I don't like it. I cannot believe that this dude who's made so many songs that I've loved over years put out this album. He's got 2 songs on it that I like. One of them is Homecoming. It's called Homecoming. The other one's called Chrome Heart Tags. Those songs and That Way, out of 18, are the only ones I like. And it was like a super bummer for me. So that's my like music talk, I guess, of the week. Beamer Boy is better than everything on
Dang. Yeah. That's pretty interesting, actually.
Oh, and I listened to Glass Animals, that song that you referenced.
Yeah?
It was cool. I think it was missing like an oomph for me.
Yeah.
It had like the cool little like the beat and the singing, and it was going, and I can see getting into it. But for me, like I need like the chest in it.
You gotta. All right, listen. Go listen to Black Mambo by them.
Okay.
Or Black Mambo, one of the two. I don't remember. I think it's Mambo.
Okay.
That song is like a game changer.
Okay.
That one really does like mess with you a little bit. I like that song a lot.
Okay.
There's a section in there. Oh my god. I want to talk about this, but you haven't listened to it yet, so it kind of sucks. But basically, like the dude who wrote it watched an episode of Breaking Bad, fell asleep while he dreamt up like a scene basically of Breaking Bad, and then he wrote a song about it. Okay. And so that song is like inspired by Breaking Bad.
Awesome, yeah, I'll listen to that.
But also involves a mole, a sloth, and dominoes. So
pizza or the game?
The game, like with the little things, yeah. Yeah, that song is so good.
Okay.
And the music video for it, I have no clue why they chose that as their music video because it's not great. But the song itself is like super cool. Has some really intricate like pieces to it.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. It's probably my favorite song that they've ever put out.
Wow, and it's like one of your favorite bands too. So
yeah. That one's like super high up there. The only other one that I think is similar is Other Side of Paradise, I think it's called. Off of one of their newer albums.
I feel like on Spotify they only have 2 albums. I didn't know which one to listen to.
Zaba I think is better.
Okay.
Zaba.
That's their older one.
That's their older one. I like almost that's the album I've listened to every song on, and I liked almost all of them.
Okay.
That song is like way like some of their songs on there are like super wild. Like Pools makes you think of like you're in the middle of a jungle, like listening to this thing. It's crazy.
Never seen you so hyped on a song before.
Because normally my music is like pretty like, you know, like mellow, chill or something like that. Some of their songs are not that though, and I really like it.
Yeah.
My song of the week is actually "Weddings and Funerals" by Royal and the Serpent.
Okay.
And
what kind of song is that?
That is, I don't want to say it's indie pop because I feel like it's got a little bit something else to it, but it's definitely like a really melancholy song. I would describe it as like melancholy. And that song has like been on my playlist for a while, and then like on Tuesday or something of last week, I just happened to like hit it on Spotify, and I was like, "Ooh, what song is this?" Yeah. And then I listened to it a bunch. Then I actually went to go and like listen to like some of their other stuff, and they have another song called Salvador Dali, and that song reads like a Tinder profile, and it's hilarious. But I like that song too.
How does a song read like a Tinder profile?
Literally, one of the lines of that song is like, "If you like Salvador Dali, burnt toast and coffee," and then she goes on to talk about it some more, and I'm like, yeah.
He's the melting clock dude, right? Or
Yeah, he's the melting clock dude. She also references Andy Warhol.
Okay, he's the Campbell Soup guy.
He is the Campbell Soup guy.
I know things. I'm
Yeah,
cultured.
I actually didn't know much about Andy Warhol. I had to look up who that was. And one of the top things, like, he's the soup guy. I'm like, oh, I know the soup thing.
Not everyone is culturally as advanced as I am.
That's true. Yeah, that's my Song of the Week update. But Glass Animals, if anyone's listening, are fantastic, and they're super experimental, I feel like.
Nice. I'll listen to that. Like, yeah, I got the gist of something cool from that song you recommended. Maybe it also has to be a time and place thing for me. I have to listen to songs so many times before I feel like I can get them.
Yeah. I think you would like anything, a lot of stuff off of Zappa a lot. Just if you like, because you like Young Thug and he's kind of out there, and they're kind of out there too.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's it for Song of the Week, and I guess with this new structure, that's it.
That's it.
Outro time?
Outro time. Wait, how long was this one?
We're at an hour 16, so probably after we cut out that minute in the beginning, an hour 15.
That's pretty good. All right. Hell yeah. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening and watching this episode. Let us know if you like this one more or less.
Yeah, we'd love some feedback. One of the hard things of this show is that we've gotten zero feedback up to this point. Kind of just throwing this out in the internet, and we would love any kind of feedback. Tell us we suck. Like, that's way better than nothing.
Is it?
At least tell us why we suck. If you're gonna tell us we suck. But yeah, just anything. Check us out on Twitter. We have a website. We've updated documentation and stuff. See if that is helpful or not.
If you're a developer, our GitHub is popping right now.
Very popular.
Yeah, there's like 4 or 5 different like pull requests and like things going on and like notes and stuff. So there's a lot more happening there than anywhere else, I feel like.
When I looked at our GitHub stats, we actually have traffic because I link to it from other stuff. And we have people cloning the repo, but no one is doing anything beyond that. And I think it's been because we have no documentation outside of this podcast. We've been thinking like, oh, someone will just listen to 2 hours of us talking. But they don't. So we're going to kind of figure stuff out from here. But yeah, we just love feedback and Twitter and GitHub. And
I wonder if they're cloning the repo and then being like, what the heck, this web doesn't work.
Where's the package?
Where's the package.json?
I added the package.json, by the way.
I noticed that. And you know what really sucked out? When I saw the PR for it, I was like, that's what I did that week too. The week where I was like, I didn't do anything for Homegames. Like, that's what I did. And I was like, I should have just put that PR out.
Well, the thing that sucks is that I had it locally. I just never committed
it.
Yeah. So I put that up. I put it in master too. I put it in that PR, but I already have it. I can just put it in the master. Anyway, that is it for this one. We will see you next week with something else. Maybe video, maybe in the same place. I actually don't know where I'm going to be in a week. Crazy world.
On Earth, hopefully. All right, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you next week.